All right, next item on the agenda is the last reorganization item carried over from the last meeting. May I have a motion for item F, the Reorganization Board of Education meeting schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cancro, second by Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the good of the cause for the public, where members of the public are invited to express themselves on school-related matters of concern to the community. To allow for a fair and orderly public comment period, comments are limited to 5 minutes. Members of the public are reminded this is a public televised meeting of the Board of Education. To protect the privacy of all students and staff, concerns regarding individual students and staff must generally be addressed first by meeting with the appropriate administrative staff. Any members of the public who wish to speak to the board, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is John Dressner. I live at 55 Duke Street, New Brunswick. 2 of my children are 9th graders. One is a senior in the high school, and one of my children graduated high school last year. I'm here once again to talk about the spate of hate and bias incidents that have been occurring in our schools. I was really hoping that tonight would be the night that I could begin to focus on my remarks on solutions to the problem, and I will get to that, but sadly I must begin by setting the record straight. Let me start by saying that round 1 of this battle is over, and you, the school system, have lost. You tried desperately to make sure that news of the anti-Semitic incident that occurred in my daughter's 9th grade biology class on March 1st would never see the light of day. And in my initial conversation with Principal Suter, he characterized the hate act as an isolated incident. He suggested that talking about it in a public way could bring about copycat incidents. He told me that he wasn't inclined to have a school assembly to condemn the act and educate students about the seriousness and dangers of acts of hate and bias. He preferred to have small group conversations in individual classroom settings. Well, guess what? There was no assembly, and there wasn't a single small group conversation. Not even in my daughter's biology class where the hateful words and imagery were discovered. Then, after more than 2 months of dodging and delays on the part of the school administration, the Board of Education formally decided to take no immediate action. Only when my ex-wife, Lisa, and I made it clear that we planned to speak out publicly about the matter did the board finally decide to make a public statement. At your May 4th meeting, Mr. Simmons let people know that there was, quote, an incident at our junior high school involving anti-Semitic writings on a desk, end quote. While I'm quite sure that the board was privy to the specific details of that incident, none were shared at the public meeting. Why? Because to share any details might lead to public outrage and calls for meaningful action. Then the board's attorney felt compelled to point out that the hateful words and imagery were written on a desk in the back of the classroom and on the back of that desk. Why share that detail? To convince us that no robust response was called for because so few people were aware that the incident even occurred? The board even lied to us about the reporting of the incident. We were told that it was reported to law enforcement on the same day that the incident occurred. That's a lie. The incident occurred on March 1st. I emailed the principal about it on the morning of March 2nd. After filing an open public records request and having to ask the township clerk's office repeatedly for the incident report, which is public information, we discovered the truth. The report was filed on March 3rd, 2 days after the incident occurred. And Mr. Suter claimed that the incident occurred on that same day, March 3rd, 2 days later than it actually did. These incidents are supposed to be reported on the day they occurred. Evidence has to be gathered and investigations need to be initiated as soon as possible to give school officials and law enforcement the best chance of catching those who committed these acts. The truth is, had Lisa and I not reached out to Mr. Suter, this incident probably would not have been shared with law enforcement. Sash? Well, the jig is up. Yesterday, an article about the incident and many others like it was published in the Home News Tribune, and now thousands know about it. In addition, today, images of the hateful imagery and speech was widely disseminated on Facebook. Here are the images. They're revolting, they're threatening, and they should have been condemned the moment they became known to school officials. When we filed our open public records request, we also asked for information about every single bias incident that has been reported to the police in the current school year. We were told that there were only 2 incidents. The first is the one we've been talking about. The second is one that couldn't be shared with me because the report apparently contains the name of a juvenile involved and hence can't be shared. Do you really expect us to believe that only 2 bias incidents have occurred in the schools this year? I could list half a dozen that meet that criteria, the criteria that Mr. Simmons outlined at the May 4th board meeting. Since the sad saga began,
1 minute.
2 more anti-Semitic incidents have occurred that I know of, both happening at Hammersholt. On May 1st, a Jewish girl returned to her desk to find a piece of paper with a swastika accompanied by the words, "Kill yourself." And 2 weeks later, a desk was discovered with more swastikas, along with the words, "White is supreme" and "KKK." 6th and 7th graders. I also learned from a friend, who happens to be here tonight, of another incident that occurred at the high school 2.5 months ago. My friend's son was walking down the hallway and came across a student scrolling swastikas on a wall. My friend's son asked, "What are you doing?" Then he said,
10 seconds.
"Do you know that I'm Jewish? You got a problem with me?" Then he told a nearby female student to report the incident to someone of authority. The student fled. My friend's son
Time,
met with the
sir.
assistant principal.
Thank you, Mr. Dressner.
Time. It's
With
5
all,
minutes.
with all due
5
respect,
minutes.
this is
We
a
have 5
very,
minutes.
this is a
5
very,
minutes, sir, it's 5 minutes.
sir, this is,
5 minutes.
this is a very important issue. You literally have lied to me from these daises. You literally have lied to me from these microphones, and I believe I have a right to talk about an issue that is very important to the people of this town.
Sir?
With
5
respect,
minutes
I'm asking to finish my
No,
remarks.
we have a 5-minute limit.
Then you know
Thank
what, then you know what, sir? My daughter will finish my remarks. And you can be on the record for trying to silence people who are talking about an issue that needs to be discussed. And by the way, I talked to the reporter,
Sir,
who wrote the
5
article.
minutes is up.
I understand. I talked to the reporter.
But you're continuing, sir.
You're continuing.
The policy of the district is that it is a 5-minute limit. There are no exceptions on that. This is not a single issue where you're being singled out.
That's fine.
So please respect the
Thank you.
policy
Thank
of
you,
the
Mr.
board.
Giuliani.
It's an extra 30 seconds.
Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Zoe Dressner. I live at 2 Green Hills Road. First of all, it's quite absurd that he couldn't finish his remarks when this is an extremely serious issue, and obviously there are issues with the board that need to be addressed, and I think it's pretty ridiculous. But to continue for my father, I'll say that he said he was happy to know, okay, actually, I'll go back to the start of the incident that he began to describe, which was a student in the high school whose son, who was walking down the hallway and came across a student scrawling swastikas on the wall. And this boy who saw the swastikas being drawn said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "You know that I'm Jewish. Do you have a problem with that?" And he told another student to report the incident. And the person who was drawing the swastikas fled the scene. And the person who found that person, person who found the person drawing the swastikas reported it to the administration, and there was a report about it. The video footage was looked at, and the student was identified and apparently suspended. We're glad to know that the kid was caught and punished, and thanks to the person who observed the incident happening and his courage, it was reported. But what about this teachable moment that we had and missed? There was no public acknowledgement that the incident occurred. I, myself, am very active in the community, and I'm Jewish, and I'm part of another Jewish community, and I never even heard about this incident, which is quite ridiculous that something so serious could happen and no one hears about it, which means that everyone who heard about it from other students thinks it's all right. So why is there all this silence, and why are you guys suppressing the information? Students and parents have a right to know what's going on in the schools, especially when it involves hostility and threats aimed at marginalized groups like Jews, Muslims, Hispanics, African Americans, gays, lesbians, and that's just to name a few. The time has come to put together a serious long-term strategy to combat these issues that have been plaguing our schools for far too long. Assembly should take place in both the high school and junior high school. 2 months ago, my dad offered help to the district to bring a speaker from the Anti-Defamation League. No follow-up was ever made to that offer. Bias response teams should be organized to help the schools respond more appropriately when future incidents occurred. Teachers and administrators should take seminars that educate them about the proper way to respond to these types of incidents. Many school districts are doing an excellent job of getting in front of these issues, and we should be learning from their examples. No one here has all of the answers, but there are many people who are experts who can offer guidance and assistance. The bottom line is that we can and must do much better than we're doing, and my parents look forward to working with other concerned parents and students and school administrators to combat this troubling situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dressner.
Good evening.
I just want to
Jake,
mention that you can remove that booster.
Yeah, you
oh
don't,
yeah,
you
I don't need
don't,
the booster.
you don't have to stand on that.
I actually don't even need the mic.
Well, you will so we can pick it up.
No, I
So,
know.
yeah.
Jay Glick, 7 White Oak Road here in East Brunswick. I wanted to actually follow on to the last two speakers, but from a slightly different perspective. I was raised here in East Brunswick, went through the school system. I have one son who is graduating, hopefully, in 3 weeks, a daughter in 6th grade in Hammersholt. But what really brought me here was if the timeline is true, so if the report indeed does state March 3rd for an incident that occurred March 1st, it sounds eerily similar to me to a situation that occurred 6 years ago in this district, and I'm sure there's many more. I sat with your predecessor, Dr. Valesky, Joanne Magistro, had a very long conversation. And that conversation went along the lines of, you were very lucky at the time the state's HIB law was going into effect the next year, because you actually had district employees participating in harassment, using derogatory language, reinforcing students using language that would be considered homophobic slurs. We had an incident 10 years ago in this district where a guidance counselor told a young student in the 2nd grade that was okay. It was not a problem that he wanted to wear a pink shirt and other students made fun of him. She literally told his parents they should go buy a different shirt. So why am I here? I'm here because what I'm seeing is a pattern potentially. And again, I don't have the veracity of anything more than what I've seen in the news, what I've heard today. If that is true, and I could very easily pull that same report, then I see a pattern that has continued for 10 years minimum, since I've seen it, where the district chooses to avoid bringing these issues to light for 2 reasons. The biggest reason, it's bad publicity. Biggest reason, once you actually treat it as an HIB act, you must report it to the state. It is now a statistic. I'm willing to bet there were more than 2 issues in this district this year. But amazingly enough, many of them were kept down in the building and not reported to the central office, as those incidences were 6 years ago. My challenge to this board is we can't change what's been done. What I would expect of a township such as this, of a township that does try to instill diversity, and it has been that way for 45 years, that we acknowledge that when there are issues, let's treat them as issues and let's not hide them so that we don't have to report them. Let's actually work with the system to make things better for our students. Again, I cannot comment on the veracity of what I have been told. However, if the premise is true, I would strongly urge this board to look at this from a different perspective. And as somebody of the Jewish faith, raised in a town that 40 years ago was at least 30% Jewish and is still highly Jewish population-wise, the fact that this was not recognized as what it was disturbs me on a personal level as a member of this community. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glick. Any other members of the public wish to address the board? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public portion. Dr. Valesky, you had a remark?
I want to make a clarification for the public. In the comments tonight, for the good of the cause, it was mentioned that the incident at Churchill was not reported for a couple of days after the incident occurred to law enforcement. What the public has to understand is the dynamic in our school district has changed dramatically in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, we did not have school security officers in our schools. At Churchill, we have a retired East Brunswick police officer, we have a retired FBI agent, and we have a retired state trooper, all of whom responded to the situation that Mr. Dressner referred to immediately upon discovering the anti-Semitic remarks on the desk. They began an immediate investigation and began interviewing students. They were experienced law enforcement officers who are not currently employed, but in that capacity, served in that capacity while they were active duty. The school has the ability to interview more freely than when we turn that over to the police department. Once it becomes a police investigation, it's their investigation. So our policy does not define a time when we have to turn it over to the police. It says if there's a trend or a theme, we have to turn it over to the police. And in fact, the county prosecutor has determined that this incident is not a bias incident, that it is a harassment incident because no specific person was targeted. That's the words of the county prosecutor. And you're welcome to call them to verify that. So I just wanted to clarify that because I think there's some misinformation out there. The Hammersholt incidents that were reported, we did have 2 incidents. They were both investigated, and we brought resolution to both of them. So they were found to be, we actually determined the culprits in both situations. I can't talk about the situation, but they have been resolved.
Thank you, Dr. Valesky. Mrs. Becker?
Mr. Glick, give me. You're absolutely right. About 10 years ago, myself and Mrs. Shaw were made aware of a lot of bias against gay, lesbian, transgender children, and it bothered us very much. And we didn't think that the administration knew about what was going on every day. And we brought it to their attention, as did other people, concerned parents like yourself. And I want to tell you that there was a tremendous response on behalf of the district. There were so many programs put in place, but more important, the kids set up their own organizations and clubs to bring support to each other and to create awareness. And I'm happy to say that today, if you talk to a child currently in the high school, they'll say, "Oh, there are kids who are gay? Oh, okay, fine." So, thank you for being concerned and for referencing that. I remember it. The only other thing I wanted to say was, what kind of made me sad is when you said that the first battle has been lost. I wasn't aware that this was a battle.
I believe you made it a battle.
I think
We're
we're
not
all
having
fighting for the
conversation
same
here.
thing, Mr. Dressner.
I agree.
Okay?
but I don't
You
feel-
are
I don't-
forgetting that we
Miss-
folks
Mrs.
are
Shaw.
part of your community. Your children came to my door on Halloween. My daughters probably taught them how to swim and certainly guarded them at the swim club. We are not your enemy. We're here to work with you, and that's really all I can say about it.
I have a
Okay.
very
Mrs. Becker, you had something further?
No.
Okay, all right. Hold on one second. Anyone else with anything further on this issue? Okay.
member of the public would like to speak.
Well, the public portion is closed. Mrs. Becker and Mrs. Shaw, you're finished? All right. Next is the Board of Education agenda. May I have a motion for item H1?
Who would like to speak?
The public portion was closed, but I will open it for you. Please go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Pooja Kansagra. I live at 2 Aldingham Circle, East Brunswick, New Jersey.
Could you please repeat your name?
Pooja Kansagra.
Thank you.
So today was an interesting morning at East Brunswick High School. Dr. Vanella made an announcement during homeroom. Over the speakerphone, Dr. Vanella vaguely addressed that there were bias incidents going on in the district and that we, East Brunswick, do not accept or tolerate any of this because it's not who we are. He also stated that there will be consequences if these bias incidents occur, and the police will be contacted even if these incidents are merely just a joke. However, he continued to state how none of these bias incidents have occurred in East Brunswick High School. I turned around to look at my classmates' faces, and they were all shaking their heads in disagreement. Although this announcement took place, it was partially a lie. There is still failed acknowledgement on the hate incidents that have occurred in East Brunswick High School, and these incidents have occurred from teachers and our own students. There was a Muslim student who spoke at the last Board of Ed meeting explaining all the Islamophobic slurs she had faced in East Brunswick. She mentioned how this year a teacher told her class that she did not want to go to the country Fiji because there are Muslims there. In this same class, there was a student who started saying that Islam is the religion of hate and violence. This was also a biased incident that was shared with both Dr. Vanella and Mr. Hannes, and it occurred in East Brunswick High School. Similar offensive incidents have occurred by East Brunswick students as well. As mentioned in the last Board of Ed meeting, there was a post by 2 East Brunswick students mocking Mexicans mowing lawns and while wearing traditional Mexican attire, and there was a post mocking Black History Month with a mocking caption and the students wearing black face paint all over their face. These incidents were reported to the high school, and students were told that this would be investigated. Numerous students have reported these posts as racist and discriminatory. We understand that the school is not at liberty to share specific information about these incidents or how they were handled, but it is not okay to deny that we have a major problem in my own high school. All the students acknowledge that all these students know that these incidents have occurred, so denying that they take place in my own school is ridiculous. Please acknowledge that these incidents are happening at East Brunswick High School. It is not acceptable to lie to East Brunswick students that have over 1,000 kids in the high school. It pains me so much to see minorities of race and religion to be facing this type of hate in the 21st century. I myself am an Indian Hindu and have experienced troubling incidents right through elementary school in East Brunswick. I remember coming home crying from school and telling my mom that I hate being Indian and that kids in school make fun of me because I'm dark and that people wear funny red dots on their foreheads and look funny. I remember being embarrassed of my culture, and for a long time I tried to avoid being close with Indian people because I felt that people would judge me. But I'm now not that person. I'm actually really proud of who I am, and that's why I'm standing up here today. I'm representing my fellow peers, my fellow Jews, Muslims, African Americans, Indians, and Asians. We all make up this community. At the last Board of Ed meeting, some of you mentioned how you can relate to your childhood and how you guys were bullied for who you were. I forgot who, but you were saying how you were bullied for being Jewish, but you couldn't do anything about it. But you guys are here, you're sitting on these desks right now, and you have the power to do something. You are the people that are making the rules. So please, can you do something? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on that, I will close the public portion, and we will move on to our Board of Education agenda. May I have a motion for item H1, the 2017-18 school calendar revision?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cancro. Second by Mr. Hong. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion for item H2, participation in Future Ready Schools, New Jersey?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Becker, second by Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion for item H3, JCP&L easement right-of-way access? Motion by Mrs. Becker, second by Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion for our facilities items? That's going to be I, 1, 2, and 3.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Becker, Mrs. Shaw, squeaked by Mrs. Becker. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion for our financial services items J1 through, let's see, J14.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cancro, second by Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Cancro?
Yes.
Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Hahn?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mrs. Reese?
Yes.
Mr. Seeler?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
President Simmons?
Yes, motion carries. May I have a motion for our personnel items K1, K2? I think there's an addendum.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Shaw.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Becker. Is there any discussion? All in will the secretary please call the roll?
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Cancro?
With the exception of any items referring to employee 13843, specifically the Child Study Team Summer ESY And on page 48 ESY, it's a yes and abstention on that employee.
Very good. Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Hahn?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mrs. Reese?
Yes.
Mr. Seeler?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
President Simmons?
Yes, motion carries. May I have a motion for our student services items?
So moved.
L1
Second.
through 3, motion by Mr. Cancro, second by Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Cancro?
Yes.
Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Hahn?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mrs. Reese?
Yes.
Mr. Seeler?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
President Simmons?
Yes, motion carries. May I have a motion for item M1, flex school enrollment?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Shaw, second by Mrs. Becker. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have no old business. Committee organization reports go to the cause. Ruthie, what's going on at the high school now that you're in the very, very, very last stages of high school?
I hope
Well,
to graduate.
unless you're-
That's my one thing.
It's in question,
I
honey.
want to
We'll
stay
vote.
back, but
We can talk.
well, I think for a couple of weeks I've been talking about the Relay for Life event that we had on May 19th, and that was a really big success. It was a really hot day, and we had cold water to help all the students, but I think it was great seeing the whole school come together, apart from like obviously the clubs and different organizations work together with NHS to make this a success, but apart from that, we also had like a pep rally with all the students of the school that got to hear from 2 of the students that were cancer survivors, and we got to see Dr. Ranella and other administrators and teachers get dunked during the pep rally, so that was fun. But it's always good to see a large number of people unite for such a cause, and especially when it is something like cancer that a lot of people do have experience with or know someone that has fought that battle. So it was great to see EBHS painted in purple that day. Also, I think this Tuesday was EB Dare to Dream. So we heard from speakers that have autism, Asperger's, just general high schoolers, and we got to hear the obstacles that they personally had to face. Like, I know one student, she had OCD, and how she dealt with that. And it's just great to see how they overcome their obstacles, and we can see that our own peers face this, and we're not alone. If we go through such a thing, we're not alone. And also that if they can fight through it, so can we, because we're the same. Prom bid selling was, I think, last week, and I have to give the credit to class of 2017, class council. They were amazing at it. I know from previous years, we've had like seniors stand in the terminal till like 3:34 buying tickets, but this time it was like done in like half an hour, and it was quick, get your ticket and leave, and that the organization that they had was, whew, incredible. Also, today and tomorrow, we have the NHS blood drive, so a lot of the students are donating blood to the American Red Cross Society. So
Excellent.
we're gonna get a lot of blood from there, and also, yeah, that's it. I can't wait to graduate.
All right.
Please, Dr. Wilson, please.
Any other good of the cause organization reports, committee reports? Anything?
I have one
Mrs.
item.
Shaw.
I wanted to thank Mrs. Lax for inviting me to come to Memorial School last week for their Disability Awareness Day. Principal Cheryl Jones and the staff and all the parent volunteers did such an awesome job in creating stations that allowed students and guests, such as myself, to experience various disabilities and what it would be like to be in their shoes. So anyway, it was a fun time. The kids actually were enjoying and appreciative of the opportunity to learn more about their friends in school and how life can be different for each of us. So I thank you very much.
All right.
Can I answer?
You have the floor.
I'm very glad you came. Mary and Barbara came to represent the board. I was actually there in the helper capacity, and I worked the dyscalculia, I hope I'm saying it right, the dyscalculia table which showed kids almost like dyslexia, but with numbers. So we did some interesting things where the children would look at a penny, and instead of it being a cent, it would be worth 25 cents. So they had to do the math all over again using a different formula than they used to, and showing them what some of the challenges are that their peers face. There was also the hearing impaired, visually impaired, so they
The
were-
wheelchair with the obstacle course
had the
and
kid-
having
yes.
to lean over and pick something up without using your feet to balance yourself was pretty interesting.
And the kids came in, they had all the kids in all the different grades came in and spent time at all the different stations. And it really was an eye-opener for a lot of them, because where I think that there's a very good vibe with a lot of the kids, they're very accepting of these children. I don't think that they really understood what they're going through. I think that they know that they should be accepting of their friends, and they should be helpful, but I think this was nice for the kids to actually see the challenges that their
Are there
peers face.
photos, video, anything from the event?
I saw there were a couple
There were
here. I
some
think
on
there were.
Victor's
Besides, I mean,
report.
anything more?
There should be, and actually, this was
Video?
their first one, so I think my guess is that the board will be asked to come. And I think, is it Central? I'm trying to remember, there's other schools that do it. It really should be in all the
It
elementary
would be great
schools.
to be at every school.
Um,
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there'll be
All right.
an invitation forthcoming next year. I believe that they're going to do it each year. But it really was nice. It was great for the students. It was nice as an adult to see. So I appreciate it.
And it wasn't like, a formal presentation. I mean, it was all
No.
very interactive and just very interesting. Also, the sign language guy was pretty amazing, too.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Anyone else? Anything? Mrs. Chu?
Monday, I attended a monthly meeting of the East Brunswick Human Relations Council. Various events are being planned, and, there'll be more details available later. There is a joint event with the library for July, showing of a film, A Portrait of Wally. So look for it at the library's informational pages. That's jointly sponsored with the Human Relations Council. And there's other events that are being planned, and, more to come on that.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we have a need to go into closed session to discuss 2 HIB cases. The employees listed in your agenda, legal advice. May I have a motion to go into closed session for those items?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kankro, second by Mr. Hahn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good night, everyone.
I'll say something.